Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cast and Spear podcast. Today we have Eric Anderson. You can hit him up on Instagram at Eric_J Anderson. We're going to be covering how to shore dive in rough conditions today, something that is super important if you want to dive safe. Welcome back to the show, Eric.
Hey, glad to have you. Thank you.
Perfect. So I know that there's a lot of guys that we kind of joke about where, you get a free time to get in the water and you're gonna send it. It doesn't matter if it's 30-foot waves. It's just like let's make it happen today. It's the only day off I got, but that can lead some people into trouble. So what do you recommend that they kind of think about before getting in the water?
Yeah. No, I mean, before I get going, I'll admit I was that guy for years. And I could still be that guy. I won't say I'm completely not. It
I'm
depends on
still
how
that
long I've been out
guy. I just joke because it's about me.
But I think the first thing is to if you clearly see that there's big sets, or there's swell, or waves are crashing, it doesn't mean that the dive's canceled. Just take a moment, watch the water. Watch it for at least 15 minutes. 30 would be ideal if you've got the time. Watch the sets. See, when that big closeout wave's coming in, what are the next, 2 or 3 sets look like? Is that your best opportunity to get in? We'll get into more detail on some other things, but really it's just don't be so eager to just yeet your spear gun and send it into the water head first, swan dive. There's a lot to think about. So just take a moment, watch the water. All good water women and men should know how to read the water, and it's very important, especially from a shore dive. You don't have that access to a boat. You can't just swim back to the boat, which is already positioned outside of that area anyways.
I think that's a great place to kind of begin because I don't know too many people who maybe have kind of like asked, like, hey, what is your protocol or process before you get to the beach, right? So it's like, are you on Surfline and what do you look for? Do you look at tide switch changes and you're like, look at the delta between the high low or the low high, whatever? Can you go through your process to kind of be like, hey, man, this is a good dive day. Let's go.
Yeah. I start on CDIP, which I think is UCSD's website. They're pretty accurate and consistent, and they actually ended up just putting a buoy up here in Monterey Bay, so even more accurate for us. And then from there, I'll check Surfline. The surfing sites, what I've seen just across the board, this is a general statement, they always make the swell look a little bigger than it might be. There's a reason for that. So just take it with a grain of salt. If you can, drive down there and look at it. For myself in Santa Cruz, I'm 20 minutes from the water. I'll just go look at the conditions the night before or something else. And if there's a webcam, then definitely, that's an awesome thing to have. But just kind of, line up your couple sites and see what's happening, start to plan ahead, think about where you're going to go. And then from there, start pinpointing. Google Earth is great. If you're going to a new spot, where could I get in the water? Do some research. There's tons of resources available on the internet. Before just going there and going, all right, here's a trail, and you get yourself in some stupid situation where you can't hike back out, or you get down there and it's a tough spot and you can't even get in the water. You've wasted all that time.
How about timing? So you get to the shore, you see, pretty big sets. Do you wait? Like, I know you said wait 15, 30 minutes, but how do you get that timing just right?
Yeah. So, depending on where you're going, ideally on a shore dive, like in Santa Cruz, because it's slow continental shelf, it's shallow. Even at the outside edge of the kelp is 35 feet. Wait till high tide if you can. Time it with the tide, or that hour lull where you're going to have the best chance of some calmer water. A lot of these spots, low tide already makes it more challenging in itself. The tide's low. Everybody knows what comes with that when it comes to shore entrance and everything else. So our thing really is looking at the tide and then looking at the weather, of course. If you're going to have better conditions in the morning, in the afternoon, is there going to be a lot of wind in the afternoon? So do you get in the water at 11, but at 1 o'clock there's wind, and when you try to get out, it's whitecaps and the swell that was 6 foot is now 10. You have to account for that to think about it. If you don't, you're only putting yourself at risk. I know this because I've done it so many times where I get in the water and have that oh shit factor. How am I going to get out? So it's comes from experience.
Absolutely. How about your gear? Because I know some guys they make their boogie board rigs where you can put your gun, your fins and everything, and then you kind of can paddle like swim out beyond the break, and then you can put on your gear. So like, do you have anything special that you do for that, especially when it's rocky? Because a lot of stuff we do here isn't nice sand beaches. It's like you're going off a cliff or something.
Yeah. So a lot of guys swear by a dive board, and I used to dive with one a lot, especially for ab dive. But now with a good dive buddy, I like to run slick. I don't like to have to worry about coming back in with a 4-foot boogie board full of shit and try to hike it out and then strap it to my back and hike it out. Now it's beneficial, obviously, if you've got a bunch of fish, but maybe I'll hide a gunny sack or something for the hike out and not have to have my big board. In rough conditions, it's even worse idea, in my opinion, to try to bring a board out there. You're constantly worried about it. You're putting one more thing in the water when you anchor it up to get tangled in. There's just a lot of reasons why. So I try to run slick. I attach the fish to my weight belt, and then I'll hike out. I'll bring an extra bag to help me with that hike out if I need it. But for guys that do use a board in calm conditions, makes sense. In rough conditions, I would absolutely advise against it.
How about when it comes to planning your escape routes, right? So there could be some unforeseen currents that kind of take you off your exit point. Like, do you guys have a plan like that you talk about ahead of time before you get in the water, while you're in the water? What's that kind of process?
Yeah. I think obviously next to just watching the water, seeing what the movement looks like and everything else, it's the second thing to identify is where am I going to get out? Getting in's easy. I mean, how many places do we know where you can just jump in and go for it? But then you have to climb back out. And then if you can't climb out, you need to be comfortable sitting out for a while and waiting for 15 minutes to time your swim in. And then once you're committed, you got to go for it. There's not a lot of time for lull. But at the same time, there's of course a lot to think about. When you get committed and you make your beeline for the shore, if you feel you're gonna have to ditch or the water does something that puts you in a shitty position, don't fight it. Go with it. Let it push you up over the rock and wash you back down a little bit, as opposed to trying to cling on, turn yourself sideways, get turned upside down. Just you're never gonna overpower the ocean ever. So just go with the water. Hopefully it pushes you back out. Get away from everything and try again. If you can't get back, you need to identify a beach or somewhere else you can swim to. And that's where the wind comes into play. That's where the current comes into play. Are you going to have to swim up current against the wind to try to get to some beach because you didn't look at that and the beach you identified is against everything? So it's just taking the time, looking at the water, knowing what the conditions are going to be, knowing that there may be wind in the afternoon or there's current typically you're at a spot where there's current typically or something else, and being really thorough and thoughtful about how you're going to get out of the water, I think will go a long way. Anybody can jump in and shoot fish. So
You're bringing back a lot of bad dives for me because I remember it's so important when you go. Cause you're the one that comes to mind is this time that I went with a guy that I never dove with before, shore diving at least. I dove with him off a boat before, but he was relatively new, and we were going at night for lobster, which is a whole different can of worms because depending on where you're going, you don't really have any kind of street lights. You just have your flashlight. And what happened was the currents kind of took us south, and we didn't really account for when we were coming back in the change in the wave height, which went from like a 2 foot to a 6 foot. And then there was like this shallow underground large slab of concrete with a very abrasive top edge. And I kind of knew about it, and I was like, we're not going to go. Of course, we're not going to go back in that area, right? But the guy panicked because it was really bad work, and he was just kind of fed up, and it was cold. It was like, wintertime. So he just sends it trying to go, that's shore I'm going to go. And then I'm like, oh no, because now you see a guy who's like getting thrashed in like a foot and a half of, on concrete, but 6 foot waves. So that's a lot of power. And I'm trying to like get to him to kind of tell him, let's go back to this other way. And it was just a nightmare. So you're absolutely right that you can't fight the waves. Like that was the only time that I've ever really messed up my knee. Like you have like big cuts, you had ripped wetsuit, almost lost the fins and all that jazz. So you gotta be careful. That's one thing. Be cognizant, especially with your dive buddy. But Yeah, getting out can be the hardest part.
It really can be. And it's just, watching the water too. Um, you could be coming up to an area where you see, or the water's banging against something, it has nowhere to go. So it's creating that bit of like a conveyor belt, almost like a rip current a bit. Use that to get out. You know that that's going to be a good area. You don't come back in there though. That's not, that's the area you avoid. So it really is just, and then once you get to know a spot, that's the other. Obviously, these are a lot of things you consider for those first couple times. Once you know a spot really well, you know what to expect. Of course, there's always variables, but it makes it much easier. You don't have to go through the same stringent process every single time.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you people should be aware of when it comes to shore diving?
Uh, have a buddy. Tell people where you're getting in the water and about what time, when they should expect to hear from you again. And then when it comes to your buddy, if you're number one to get in the water, don't be the number two guy that's like, no, I'm not going to get in the water. And now you put your buddy in a situation where he's not going to make the dive. Now he's got to figure out how to get his butt out of the water. And you're standing there eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich or whatever. I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to buddies. So that sucks when you guys commit. One guy goes for it, and the other's like, nope. Good luck with the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy.
No, I like that. And I would say one other thing that I don't think I've heard anybody really talk about is it's really easy to get knocked out, and then you're screwed. So be careful with your head. If a wave crashes on you and it bounced off a rock because you didn't see it or something,
Yeah.
that's
How many surfers do you see with helmets on? I see more and more all the time, at least in Santa Cruz,
do you.
because they're worried about banging their head down the reef in some spots where, yeah, the wave's 6 foot face, but it's only 3 feet deep because it's running over the top of rocks. We're jumping in and off the rocks and knowing that we're going to have to climb out on them on all fours like a sea otter. So, yeah, don't bang your head. 7 millimeter neoprene is not going to protect it that much.
Oh, that's a perfect place to stop. If you guys want to reach out to Eric, hit him up on Instagram. It's at Eric_J Anderson. Tomorrow we are going to be covering what it's like to dive in Central California. Dive safe, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.